Welcome to our podcast, Navigating the Healing Path with Maggie and Nicki. Over the course of our first season, with episodes uploaded every Tuesday, we will be discussing the instrumental building blocks to living an authentic and heart-based life. It is our desire and intention that through our channelings and conversations, we can offer a feeling of relief, connection, and hope for those walking this challenging path. So, if this podcast feels like it interests you or resonates on some level, then we'd be honored if you stuck around to listen.
This week, we will be delving into the information gathering portion of the spiritual awakening process, self-awareness. This is one of the first foundational steps in creating transformation within ourselves as we figure out who the fuck we are. We are very excited to be back in this space, sharing our insights and experiences that we've had on our own personal healing journeys. Let's get started, shall we? So we're going to invite everyone to connect through our breath. Receive a nice deep breath and release. So what we like to do, like to call this dropping in. Often throughout our days, we are in our minds, we are in our heads, being like, okay, I got to do this, and that's great. But this is a time for self-reflection, to feel ourselves, to connect. And my favorite way to connect is through the heart. And the way that we speak and the way that we channel our messages or our higher wisdom is through the heart. We position ourselves in love, and this is where we speak from. So we are inviting everybody to drop into your heart. You can take an elevator down. You can just feel the sensation going from the head down into this chest. Go ahead and receive one more deep breath. And release.
I love breathing.
There really is something about breath work. It really does. It's what brings you inside. It's like the direction. It's one of the first things we do in meditation is you focus on your breath. That's the beginning steps of presence. Focus on your breath. Because it's so automatic.
Yeah. Breathing is the bridge almost to the bridge of awareness.
Let's see what you're doing there.
Thank you.
So many bridges. We're just going to have like a whole island of connectedness through bridges. So, self-awareness, not to be confused with self-consciousness. So I do like being self-conscious, but not in the negative connotation that culture has given us, where it's like, oh, you should not be saying that. You should be self-conscious. This is bad. Don't do that. That's not what we are talking about. When we're talking about self-awareness, it's looking at how you are showing up in your life, the words you say, how it affects other people. Are you aware of your behavior, of your reactions, of how your communication style affects your life? So as you begin to awaken to life in a meaningful way where you feel authentic and you're living a purpose, and to me this is like just hand in hand with spirituality and healing, that's just how I'm made up. This is my pathway into it. But it's a tool to help see yourself clearly without the distortion of culture, of other people telling you who you are. I feel like a lot of people have learned to become dependent on what other people think. They really care what other people think, how they see them, how they're perceived, and whether they're successful or not, or attractive enough or not. And
it's hard not to in the world that we live in.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. It's like ingrained and baked into the social construct and like the programming and all of this.
Yeah, it's so hard to avoid.
It is also really painful.
Yeah.
When you don't feel good enough because you play the comparison game, the more than less than game, like all of that. And so much of what runs people doesn't actually serve the highest good. it's been developed through fear tactics and just a lot of fear.
So much.
Yeah. Self-awareness, looking at yourself, the words that you say. You know, is there a phrase that you repeat all the time? You know, like what comes up? What programming, what language, what thoughts repeat like over and over and over? This is all really important when you're learning to identify who you are. Ooh, the train left. It derailed. That's interesting.
That is interesting.
Isn't it? That's so weird when a channel does that. It's like, hi, we're going to go here and. Oh, where am I?
Well, can I ask you a question?
Please.
So would you say that the difference between self-consciousness and self-awareness is the judgment from the mind?
Nail on the head there. That's exactly it. I think that is the difference. Because judgment as a program inherently disconnects you from other people, right? It's tied in with the more than, less than. And the more than, less than is like a game that people play when you don't have a lot of self-confidence. Bullies use this tactic. A lot of like managers will use this because they don't feel good about themselves. So somebody else has to be worse off, has to be less than them so that they can feel better, right? And so judgment is a tool in that, and comparison and like all of this to make more and less, good and bad, all these definitive black and white judgments. And in my experience, that does not serve me personally because that just disconnects me. And if I'm just here to connect with people, that doesn't make sense. And it really just takes you out from doing the work. It can just be like, well, I'm a shit person now. Look at that. I react like this. I'm super angry. I yelled at my child. I'm a piece of garbage. And that's not accurate. Becoming self-aware of how you show up gives you power later to choose how you would like to show up. So it's a way to gain control of yourself. Instead of being easily triggered or manipulated by everyone around you because of maybe you were raised by a narcissist and you're a little codependent, or you enable people, or you're a people pleaser. You know, you were made to behave in a certain way that filled roles and sustained other people's energy field or their sense of value or worth. And so part of, for me, and I feel like for you and a lot of us on this journey, is remembering who we are. And so in order to do that, you have to feel yourself. You have to know yourself and begin to look at that. And that's really some of the scariest work.
Yeah.
Is going within. It's painful in there.
Super painful. We were just talking about this earlier. It's going really deep into the subconscious, and eventually, this is like a very long journey over time, of course. But diving into the unconscious and the way that you can get to that point where you can start building the capability and the tools to really go into your unconscious is through that self-awareness. And then that's where the magic happens.
But the whole thing feels like an unfolding too. And even as you just begin to start, there's no wrong or right way to do this. It's just a process. You can go as slow as you'd like. You can go as fast as you can manage. But fast is sometimes good, but then you need to rest. Because that's a lot of energy. And a lot of time that you stuff that you're processing.
There's something that you say often to me as a reminder, which I like, is that if we went really, really fast and we changed really, really fast, our bodies wouldn't really be able to handle it. And so there's a reason why this stuff takes a lifetime.
It can, yeah.
Not always, but
often. It just depends on the individual and like how much of trauma and healing that you have to do. But I understood this like when I first started like my transformation work. I got to a point where I'm like, oh wait, this is never going to end, is it? And my teacher was like, no.
Yeah.
But it gets easier, and you won't have to do the maintenance as often. And it will surprise you when you get triggered because you've been so in control of yourself, and you can manage your emotions and regulate and like feel and know and take responsibility for your own things. Like it does get easier, but there's always more and more depth. As far as the universe expands, I feel it is reflected within. So I could spend a lifetime exploring my inner landscape and like who the nature of my spirit is, and I'll never get to the end of it because I'm so expansive and connected to everything. But it's a good place to start. Oh, I'm gonna. It's like they want to talk about why you started this. Like, why do we do this? Like, what is the point of becoming self-aware? Why?
Okay.
So I'm going to ask you the question first, Maggie. Why? Why would anybody in their right mind choose to become self-aware?
I feel like there's two parts to this. I can see now more so what self-awareness has the ability to create in my life. It just feels so much safer and more loving inside of my body than it did from when I was probably like around like 9 or 10 to probably the age of 21. I graduated from college the year of the pandemic. And I feel like from the age of 10 to that time was when I was really engulfed in ego and really had a lot of the parental and societal programs really instilled in me. And my responses to that were based in a lot of fear and anxiety and not feeling like it's safe for me to be who I am in the world. So in order to meet other people's expectations and their needs, I like shut myself down. But what self-awareness has given me and why I think all of this work is worth it is because now I can sit here kind of feeling the same level of comfort and curiosity for the world and for others that I did when I was a kid. And like that is like finally coming back, and I just feel so much more excited to see what the rest of my life holds, knowing that I don't actually have to listen to other people and information that doesn't feel like it's true for me. And that I think has been the most beautiful gift. Because for so long during that time period, it's like, wow, like I don't feel good in my body at all. And I look around the world and am I ever actually going to be able to be loved? Will there be anybody who really sees me, who really hears me, that I can deeply connect with? I think that was kind of the scariest thing for me during that time was like, I just didn't feel comfortable being myself. And that made me so sad. Because as a kid, I was like, I think I'm great. I think I'm awesome. Like I have so much love to give and I have so much joy and I just want to make things and I want to make art and I want to be creative and I want to be creative with people. And then the world was just kind of like, no, that's not, you can't really do that. And a whole world of other things that have turned out not to really be true.
For you.
For me, yeah. So self-awareness, I think honestly has been the greatest gift, but also some of the hardest work.
How did you begin that work? What were the like some of those first steps that you took when you began looking at yourself?
I don't know if this is quite going to answer that exact question, but kind of like the second part of my answer with that, which I feel like it will tie in. With starting this work, I kind of started getting into psychology and understanding anxiety because my anxiety reached a point where it felt so bad and uncomfortable in my body and in my brain that I was like, there has to be another way to live life because I'm not happy here. And so in college is when I started having access to psychology courses, and I was finding so much information online, and I was away from my parents for the first time, and I was away from people in high school who I just completely, I'm like a sponge. I just like completely sucked in all of these beliefs of other people. So college for me was the first time where I was like, oh, okay, I really like just don't feel good. So I kind of got not broken down to a point where I felt like I had to go and find the information. I feel like they kind of collided at a divine time, I guess, where I was really starting to just notice how just not safe and comfortable I felt with myself. And so then it was just like, there has to be another way. So information, I started looking for all types of information, and I started learning more. And then one day I feel like I stumbled across, Alan Watts was probably like one of the first people that I got introduced to, or who introduced like meditation and self-awareness to me, because philosophy and psychology went hand in hand for me. Was when like the interest started to peak of like the woo-woo, if you will, of the spiritual path. And from there, it just kind of like steamrolled into this giant ball. And to now I'm sitting here with you, who's been my spiritual mentor for a bit of time now. And now we have a podcast.
Here we are.
Yeah.
So what I'm seeing as you share that is in your childhood, you got to experience yourself in your raw form, and you got to see and live your spirit. And then the conditioning and the programming set in right before, pubescence and adolescence. And being a really sensitive person, you took on everybody's ideas about you, or the mask that you chose to wear to reflect and chameleon yourself, because you learned through experience that there wasn't space for you necessarily. It became less safe to express your creativity or your joy or your pureness, like that you want to do this thing, and that was sort of, that was like that. And then once you got out of that environment, put yourself into a new place where you got to experience more education and facets of yourself, it became more clear that no, this is not right for me. And it became very uncomfortable to exist in your body, and your spirit and your mind was wreaking havoc and just trying to maintain the status quo when there's something coming that's like, no, this is not right. This doesn't feel good to me. And I feel like a lot of people can relate to that. Like we have our innocence, our childhood, ideally. Some of us are forced to grow up early, too quickly, or have a lot of trauma. But that's the time to be free, to be creative and be playful. And I feel like since so many people lose that, and also being really sensitive, absorbing everybody else's energy. And I'm speaking to like empaths and highly sensitive people in particular. And there's so many different levels, so most people are pretty sensitive, at least that I know. But you eventually don't know what's yours and what somebody else's.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's where it gets real tricky.
And that's why we practice self-awareness, because that is the space where you get to ask yourself, is this mine, or did this come from outside of myself? It could have been a caretaker that gave you this belief or this thought or this program. It could have been friends. It could have been colleagues. It could be a number of sources. But the point is ask yourself, does this serve me anymore? Does this thought actually help me? Or is it just holding me back? And that's why when you remove judgment from it, it gets easier to process and digest and accept, because you're tracing something. Like this is like where programming comes in. I was taught from 0 to 6 is where all programming is. This is life. This is how it is. So if you had a traumatic 0 to 6, that's hard. That's hardwired into your brain, whether love and pain got wrapped around and like miswired. So many things happen before you even develop memories that affects you cognitively and psychologically. And your body remembers everything, but your consciousness doesn't. Which is why the focus on the balance of the mind, the body, and the spirit, they all require time and energy to balance those things. So when we're learning how to heal, really, one of the first things is to recognize, well, what's there? What are you feeling right now? Where is it in your body? Is there a color? Is there a texture? Like, that's the self-awareness piece. You use your mind, thank you so much for being here and helping me observing your mind, which is not going to like you to do because it wants to go surreptitiously just like operating and not telling you anything. Like, no, it's fine. I got this. I'm so good at protecting you. Trust me.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, but I'm not sure I like the programming.
Yeah. So how would you, I know you just kind of said it, but to maybe go into more detail or to give like really actionable, quote unquote, practical steps, I guess, what would you recommend as like for somebody who, let's say, like giving advice back to me when I was in college and I was at the point where I'm like, it doesn't feel good in my world and in my body and my mind is constantly overthinking and I'm swimming in programs, but like not quite aware of all of that. Mm-hmm. But I've heard of this concept of self-awareness and I want to know more. What would you say is like the first real actionable step that someone can take to start practicing self-awareness?
Well, I think evaluating where you are and the level of support and like the kind of support that would benefit you in that moment. If it's extreme, like you're having a near mental breakdown, like you're about to like just collapse because everything is just weighing down on you, that sounds like a therapist, would be really beneficial to help you sift through and look at what's happening in your current environment. That's out of balance or isn't serving or is making you feel really bad about yourself. It could be a toxic relationship that you're in. It could be just pure environmental and you get to learn new tools to get you out of that. I feel like a lot of the things that drew me into this path was I recognized that I had no coping skills. There was a quote, the first quote I ever remembered as a child was, happiness is not the absence of conflict, but the ability to cope with it. That stuck with me. I was like 8 years old when this quote came across my path, and it stuck with me this entire time. And it's like, okay, shit, I don't know if I have coping skills.
Sorry, let me hear that quote one more time.
Happiness is not the absence of conflict. It's the ability to cope with it. Because my life has been about being in joy and happiness, but I was never happy, like growing up. When I was young and innocent and didn't remember much because I have a little amnesia from my childhood, that's been my focus, trying to get there. How can I be happy when I've been harmed so much? How is that even possible? Like, how do you even do that? And that's been this whole journey. And the self-awareness and that whole thing came through meditation for me. Like when I was really ready, because I had tried to have like therapists before, and you have to find the one that really fits you, that can really listen and not have like an agenda or think that they know what's best, because they don't. And really just there to give you tools. Like I really am a big, big fan of tools. Sometimes we just need to journal. Journaling is a really great way to gain self-awareness, because the free writing, there's so many free writing journals and guides out there, so you can look that up too. But there is such benefit of journaling, because you can ask yourself questions and just wait and hear and write down what your higher self says, or your mind, if you just want to see what that has to say. Mm-hmm. So that to me was like a tool that I started using that my best friend Polly gave to me. She goes, "Oh, you should journal. We're going to read this to each other." And I'm like, what? But it was the first time I had permission to speak my truth, to be ugly in my thoughts and angry or sad. And it's like, there's no judgment there. I can just get out anything that's coming through. I just express it, so it no longer lives inside of me. Mm-hmm. It's such an interesting process, because it's like, and it's just connected to so many other different things. Self-awareness, and just, I feel like this is just part of our purpose of life, is to remember who we are at our core, at our soul level. And that's really what this is. And all of our life experiences are there as lessons to help you remember, show you who you are, but also remind you who you are not. There's been many times where I've behaved in a manner that is unbecoming and completely out of alignment with who I am at my core. And I'm like, what the fuck is that?
Yeah.
That is so not integral to me. And it feels foreign and awful. And like I was out of control. Like it wasn't me.
Yeah. Like this hasn't happened in 25 years. What is going on?
Who is that?
Yeah.
But then, because I have self-awareness, I can actually ask myself that question. Where did that come from? And I get to look back at the trigger. Oh gosh, my kid. That was my kid. Kids trigger you a lot. They love to point out where you can use some healing. Thank you so much. You look at the trigger. And then you see how far back you can go. Where was the first time you ever observed that behavior? Whose voice is that sentence in your head? And that's part of the work, is going to the source of where you first heard that. Where was that installed? Where was that repeated over and over and over in your house or at school or wherever you are?
Yeah. Quick question. So when you were mentioning the time between the ages of 0 and 6, like for you also mentioned having a bit of amnesia from your childhood traumatic experiences. If you can't remember parts of your childhood or like that time from 0 to 6, do you have any advice on dealing with trying to be self-aware when you can't really access those memories? Because for me, as an example, being birthed is traumatic.
It is.
In and of itself.
Quite.
And I feel like most people can't go back and really see and feel and experience again that moment without going into, I forget what the exact state is called, but it's like being put into like a past life regression state. Like you can access it through working with like a professional.
There's a lot of different modalities that would help you process that kind of trauma. There's somatic therapists. There's the craniosacral and polarity modalities that can also help unwind the repressed traumas in the body. I've observed one person who had a birth experience, like in like one of my cranial classes, this girl was getting worked on, and her reaction to this hold was so extreme. And we were all like asking the teacher, like, can you explain what was happening here? And he goes, actually, that was birth. And then she told her birth story, and it was really traumatic. I'm not going to share it because that's not appropriate, but it was really traumatic. And so that was what her body was willing and wanting to process. And so there was a whole process with it.
Wow.
On the table.
Okay.
So there's a lot of different ways. It's like, it's really important, because there's so many options out there, to really listen and tune into yourself and feel what resonates. There's so many different ways to regulate your system, from breathing to tapping to Qigong and Tai Chi. And there's so many avenues, so many tools. And I'm so grateful. I don't have answers for everybody. I don't tell people what to do. They share with me. I hold space. I share what's worked for me. And just, does that resonate? I'm not really sure. Okay, that's fine. You don't have to. I'm just here. This is what I'm offering. Mm-hmm. But there's a lot of other people also out there who might be a better fit, who have exactly what you're looking for, that will help you tap in and tune into your body so that you can help it heal.
Yeah. With my birth specifically, this actually has been something that I would love to dive into at some point. Probably not anytime soon. Mm-hmm. I'm a little busy with getting some other things going in my life, but definitely on my list, because when I was born, I was taken immediately to a different hospital and ICU unit because I was born with pneumonia.
Oh.
Yeah, it was always something that I was told, but not something that, like, I've definitely don't have any memory of it, but I think about that and I'm like, wow.
So you were separated from your mom. Did she come to the hospital?
Yes, but I did have to be like isolated as far as I understand.
So you're probably like in an incubator kind of situation?
Yeah, I think for a few days. And I haven't really dive in.
Words.
And I haven't really looked into that, but every now and then I'm like, that would be really, really fascinating, I think, to dive into that memory at some point and really feel and see what was there. Because as I mentioned earlier, I didn't really start realizing or like feeling like I was getting programmed in a way or dealt with anything until around like somewhere between the ages of 8 and 10 is when I consciously remember a shift in myself.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm sure ages 0 to 6, there was a lot of stuff going on there too, but I just don't remember it.
Mm-hmm. That is very interesting. And the fact that you're just curious about that story has stuck with you, I think there's probably something there. And I'm getting glimpses into it, like how it has affected you. Again, nothing wrong with it because
Of course
they
not.
were saving your life,
Right.
They did the best. Everybody, all of the caretakers did the best they could. And thank you so much because you're here.
Yeah. Shout out UCLA Hospital.
Yeah.
Literally saved my life as an infant.
Yeah. So, but what's interesting is just to consider as a newborn being separated. How did that affect your system as it developed?
Yeah, that's what I'm really curious about.
Because there was a time, and the whole birth thing brings up a lot in the world, and how like the power was taken away from women to know how to birth and be like lay down on your back. The most unnatural way to ever give birth, by the way.
That still
Doesn't allow
blows my mind.
It's so dumb. And it's so bright. Do you know how jarring that is for a newborn to go from a dark, wet atmosphere to a bright white? I know the doctor, do you really need to see? You just have to catch it. Can we just like, it's just so, it's so unnecessary.
Yeah,
But
especially like fluorescence too.
oh my God, the worst. But there was a whole generation of women who experienced twilight labor where they would literally sedate women while they were in labor and manually deliver the baby for them. They were not conscious when that baby was born.
Whoa.
Those women, who I've talked to a bunch of them, felt less connected to their parents, especially their mother. By the time the mother came out of the grogginess of the drug, they were ambivalent about this newborn baby that they were there to bond and care for and connect with. There's so much that happens once the baby crowns and then is delivered. The rush of hormones, there's bonding chemicals that get released into the body. It's also what brings the milk down and brings in the colostrum and allows that to come out and sustain the baby. Those are bonding hormones. And medical professionals decided to rob families of this connection. So there's a whole generation of people who are not connected to their caretakers, to their family. So that's something to heal and work on, because that's early. That's early programming. That's your system.
Yeah.
And I look at the system as like multidimensional and layers of physical, energetic power. The mind, the body, and the spirit. Nothing is, again, no judgment. It's just like looking at your story, what happened, and how that affected you ultimately. Because all that's going to do is just show you how to help heal it. If you weren't connected with because you had to be isolated because you had an infection in your lungs, which is deadly for a newborn.
Yeah. I forget what the exact percent was, but there was a chance I could have died.
Yeah. But so while that was in your best interest at the time to save your life, your system might have developed a resistance to connection in a supportive way.
Oh my God. Oh boy. That tracks.
Yeah. And it's not like your family failed at ever connecting with you. It's just sort of like a little thing that could help explain how you are the way that you are.
Yeah.
But there's healing things that you can do. There's things now that you can do to help heal that little wound.
100%. Which I feel like I have been.
You have.
Healing that. Just
Yes.
I haven't like quite linked it all the way back that far. But there have been a lot of other experiences in my life that have reflected that exact thing, which is that fear of deep connection with people, which is interesting. That could be linked to having had a lack of connection at birth. So wild stuff to look at through self-awareness.
Right. Yeah. Because, I mean, babies need to be held as much as possible. You know? And I'm sure you were, but just not as much as they would have wanted.
Yeah.
Or that you would have wanted.
I'm about to go have a conversation with my mom after this and be like, hey, so like what exactly, like did you get to hold me? Or was I immediately just like shipped off in an ambulance? I think I was in an ambulance. I can't even imagine that sensory experience too. That's intense.
Yeah, very confusing.
Yeah.
For a new being.
Yeah.
It's probably a lot why we don't remember as we come in
just
unconscious.
Out of survival need to just... Yeah.
But the takeaway, the silver lining that I see in this is that you were cared for and it was taken seriously and expeditiously. Everything was done in your highest good.
Oh, absolutely. Because
for sure. Because you're here.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you so much. I'm so grateful.
Definitely. That was a bit of a tangent.
It was, but it all ties in.
It does.
It feels like just a web. The web of self-awareness, how many layers and how far out and in and around it goes.
Yeah. I do have a question.
I love questions.
I guess for tying it back to judgment, because one of my biggest programs inside of myself is that judgment voice. Being a Virgo sun, very prone to perfectionism and this deep desire to try and get everything like right and perfect. And so there's like a little manager and like a mom voice and all these different things that are contributing to this atmosphere in my brain of overthinking and judging and shaming and guilting myself. So this has been one of the biggest things that I have become aware of through practicing self-awareness and through meditation and journaling and pointing all these things out, like you've been explaining. And do you have any advice or more tools for people that are struggling with a lack of self-compassion because there is a lot of judgment programming in their mind? Like, how do you start bridging that gap and quieting the judgment so that way you can actually begin to build self-compassion and understanding and healing for yourself?
As we walk down the healing journey and we recognize where our wounds are and what needs healing, we begin to bring in and practice those positive coping tools, right? And this is why find therapists and other healers and a community that can help you, that can expose you to these things that you can begin practicing. Hold on a second. I need to sit. Hold on a second.
Take your time.
There's something. Hold on. As you begin to use the new tools, you're practicing putting down the old ones. Anytime you want to release any pain or suffering or want to decommission programs or thoughts or limiting beliefs, any of that, anything that you're deactivating or removing, there's going to be a void. We mustn't leave any voids. We must replace it with a more positive coping tool or thought or affirmation or just space. Intentions are powerful tools to help you stay in alignment and clarity with the reality that you're looking to manifest. But along the path, understand that it's a slow, progressive exchange and integration of releasing the old, the things that don't serve you, and adopting and integrating the new to create new structure, new experiences, a new reality for yourself. And in that space that you learn to hold for yourself, that is where you begin to grow your own compassion for yourself, for your journey, and honoring the hard things that you got yourself through, and really appreciating and valuing the lessons and the gifts that are inherently yours. Did that answer it?
Yes. I would say so. And that does sound very accurate.
Yeah.
To what the process has been like for myself.
It's hard sometimes to even begin talking about because there's so much nuance and subtlety when it comes to healing.
Yeah. And literally everybody is coming from a different point and place and time and has their own specific experiences. So hard to give any sort of blanket information.
Which is why I'm really grateful that you and I are taking opportunities to just talk about it in our own way. Because we have unique perspectives and experiences on this that I just want to hear more about. I want people to just, I want to have it, my desire is to just have it in the greater consciousness that there are solutions. There are tools out there to help you regulate your nervous system, to help you heal the struggle and the internalized trauma that you carry, that there's support and there's love and there's hope for all of that. And I would like us to normalize healing. And that's one thing I could be grateful for that the pandemic has brought to the surface is more concern and care around mental health. I think that was really important. That was a really positive shift because it became very clear how unhappy so many people are.
Yeah.
And how things could be different. We can situate and we can change our lives that bring us more joy and fulfillment.
Yeah. I mean, 2020 for me, that was the year that I would consider I, quote unquote, woke up, if you will, from having had a few years of starting to look at all this stuff and then to have the world come crashing down. And I had to move back into the environment of my parents' house that originally instilled me with a lot of stuff, and to go back there and to have nothing but time to look at it. Yeah. I turned to so much meditation during the pandemic.
Meditation is, for me and so many people out there that I listen to, the number one tool for transformation. I don't feel like you can transform without it. You can't, because you're missing a whole leg of this three-legged stool.
Yeah.
I
mean, meditation for me, that's how I started to become aware of all the things. It's the practice of beginning to look at all of it and holding space for all of it.
That's where you do practice. Being present, connecting with yourself, learning how to go within and explore your inner landscape. It's the place where you get to observe your mind and what is so important to it. And the mind is the one that will fight it the most. Oh, you don't have time for that. I have all of this work to do. Look at this pile of laundry. I have 4 baskets of laundry. I don't have time to spend 20 minutes with my eyes closed. I'm just going to be thinking the whole time anyway. Excuse, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah. My mind is too busy. I can't meditate.
It's that.
Because I can't quiet my brain.
You know what I say to that? What do I say?
That's the point.
That's the point.
Yeah.
That's good. Fine, don't. Listen to it. Go, noted. Put it aside. Oh, another thought? Look at that thought. A thought floating by. Goodbye. It's just noticing, releasing. Noticing and releasing. If my teacher, Adrienne, would say, if you sat there with your eyes closed for 20 minutes, congratulations. You meditated.
Yep.
Even if your mind is going the entire time, were you paying attention? Did you check in with your body? Did you focus on your breath? Sometimes the mind and the thoughts actually do take you somewhere. And it's okay to follow them sometimes. It's like musicians will do this. Like they'll just be like, they wrote a whole song in their meditation because there was space for it.
Yeah.
They connected to something else that was just sort of flooding in. It's just you are learning to create space. And you need that space for your self-awareness without judgment, giving yourself distance from the triggers, from all of the things. And if you don't know how to navigate, that's why people are here to help you. There's all sorts of therapy online things these days. Find something. Find a community. Go on Meetup. Find a healing circle. Sound healing. I love those. Those are great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As we were talking about meditation and using that as a tool for self-awareness, there's a question that's kind of kept popping up, but an observation.
Listen to that.
Yeah. So what was coming up for me is I feel like where I've shared this with you before, where I feel like I'm at a point in my awakening spiritual journey where I have done so much self-searching and becoming aware of the programs and learning to unhook them and disconnect them. But now I feel like there's this, like the mind and the ego have taken on this identity of self-awareness. And I feel like this is where it gets like really like that sticky and tricky kind of game that the mind will play, where now I feel like there's always kind of like a spotlight that's within me that's searching for more. And then that's inherently bringing up shame and guilt, like, oh, there's still shit down there. I need to constantly look. I need to constantly be aware. And it's kind of turned into like a weird spiritual ego kind of thing. And it's just such like a mind-boggling, confusing place to be. But the question born out of this is, how would you define the difference between self-awareness and then presence?
I need to feel that question. Let me listen. Self-awareness is active. Self-awareness is like observance, perspective, like active is the word that keeps coming up.
Yeah, that's what was coming up for me too.
Whereas presence is state of being, right?
Mm-hmm.
Self-awareness is engaging in an action or an activity where you are introspective, where you are looking, processing, searching, like whatever it is, like the spotlight is out and looking, it's searching or just aware of it, right? Whereas presence is just a state of being in the moment where you're not in the past and you're not in the future. You are right here. You're engaged and connected. There is self-awareness in presence, like as I sit here or I talk with you and channel and just, we're having our conversations. I am present because I'm connected, I'm channeling, I'm listening, I'm connected. But I have self-awareness so I can still observe my mind thoughts. And although most of the time I put my mind aside so it doesn't really have any room when I work, but
right.
I can, like if I wasn't working, like I could still be present, but I can still be aware of myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like those two things come side by side for me when I'm parenting, because my daughter will trigger me because it's time for bed and she should just be doing what I'm asking because she knows the routine. We've gone over this 100 times or more, like seriously, so many times. And it's like, why is this a surprise? Why are you resisting? You just should be listening. Obey, obey, obey. Control, control, control. Right? So I am present. I am presently trying to get her to go to bed. But then I can notice where I'm shifting into fear of the future. How is she going to friggin' live her life or take care of herself and all the fear, like all of that. So it's like, and then it's like, okay, I can see that. I got to put that aside. That's mine. That's not for her. And I got to pay attention to the tone of my voice. And why am I yelling instructions when I would really like to be loving right now? This is like, that's my work where I'm working on being present with her, taking care of her needs, meeting her, loving her in the best way that I can, while also managing my own stuff, reparenting myself, healing these reactions, because I would much rather not be harsh. My nature is loving and sweet and caring. And when I am not that, when I am like the harsh parent, I'm like, what the fuck is that? Who is that? Oh, I see why I know where that comes from.
Yeah.
And like that's my work, is detaching that. So I'm like, Zoe, apologies that if I made you feel bad about yourself. That was all mine. so sorry. I'm going to redo this, and I'll have a take 2, you know?
Yeah.
And I'll say it the way that is more in my heart, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it can be really complicated, but I think, to answer, they do feel they are different.
Something going off what you just said too. I mean, I think the way that you handle that with your daughter is also just a great practice for anybody around you, like even for yourself. I feel like that's kind of what I've done, is when I'm having like an egoic reaction rather than like a conscious response to something in my environment or in my life, I will kind of have that immediate knee-jerk like trigger reaction.
Mm-hmm.
And then through the practice of the self-awareness that I've been doing over the years, like another voice comes in and it's like, okay, let's take that take 2. You know, how would we rather truly respond to this like authentically from a deeper space,
Mm-hmm.
like the heart?
And I feel like you nailed that. Like, and thank you for bringing that up in that way, because that is a really important key to look at. That's how you know where you're coming from. When you react, that's a trigger. That's an automated, the mind has a program ready that if this happens, you say this. If they say that, it means this automatically. Like, this is the program. A and then B, you know?
Mm-hmm.
When there is no space, when the trigger happens and then you react, blah, 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 how dare you, blah, all of that.
Like instantly.
Right, it's instant.
Mm-hmm.
Then you know that's not you, that's your ego, that's your mind.
Yeah.
Trying to protect you, naturally,
Mm-hmm.
as it tries to do. But it doesn't always serve the situation, doesn't always serve your highest good. And so why we use these transformation tools, or we gain the self-awareness and the meditation in particular, that helps you practice giving yourself a breath and some space before you react and you choose how to respond to a situation.
Yeah.
You give yourself that space to have a breath, observe what just happened in your body that would make your mind want to go off the handle and be like, okay, all right. But then ultimately choose how you want to show up. Sometimes you do want to show up. You want to meet bitch with bitch, but see what happens. You're going to get 2 bitches in here, right? That's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. Experiment, but be conscious of your choice. Be in control. Be sovereign in your emotions. Have them, please. That is power. Emotions are our power. They are not a deficit. They are not a curse. They are power. They are information. Mm-hmm. But because we were taught to not trust ourselves, that, oh no, I didn't mean to say that. Why would you take it? You just need to get thicker skin. That was just a fucking joke. La la la. It's like, take responsibility how your words affect somebody else. Start looking at how you affect others, consciously or unconsciously. I don't want to hurt anybody. I am so hypervigilant with what I say, but I've also had to let go that I'm also not responsible for how people respond to my truth.
Yeah.
If you don't want my truth, please don't ask for it, because I'll give it to you.
People-pleasing, codependent episode yet to come.
Yes.
We can dive into
Stay
all
tuned.
that. Yeah.
Next week, boundaries. But yeah, so the difference is reacting and responding.
Mm-hmm.
And you get to choose, ultimately. And that's a whole journey getting to that point. That was my least favorite thing that I heard in college, was that happiness is a choice. I'm like, fuck you. Show me. Show me how I can choose this happiness. And it took years for me to be like, okay, no, I totally get this as a choice. Because it's how I choose to perceive, how I choose to process, how I choose to feel myself.
Right. But it's not a choice without the tools in your tool belt to be able to make that choice for yourself.
Right. No, it's nigh impossible. It's really hard without those positive coping tools.
Yeah.
And
meditation.
That's why I set out.
Journaling.
Yes. Honoring yourself.
Honoring yourself.
Telling your story. Getting to know yourself. Getting to feel yourself. You know, connecting with you. And not a role that you're made to play, not to serve somebody else, but to be truly you is the ultimate gift. Nothing can beat that.
No. It feels so much better.
It really does. It really does.
And so with that, I think kind of coming to time here.
Hi, look, it's 4:44. I love it. Thanks for being here, Spirit.
Yeah, seriously. But yeah, is there anything else you wanna say to wrap up? Self-awareness, judgment, because it's such a big, complicated topic. I feel like we barely even scratched the surface.
I feel like we cast a net to like, hi, we're just, this kind of went everywhere, but I don't know. It'll make sense, I'm sure, to some people.
Hopefully. But again, like, it's such a big topic. You can't squeeze in self-awareness, which is an ongoing, lifelong practice and process. Yeah, into what, an hour?
Yeah.
God, if we could do that, the world would be very different right now.
It would. But that was a fun little journey.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for anybody who listened. Yeah. We hope you got some nugget of resonance or some new information or just some validated information for yourself. I hope everybody at some point chooses to go on the self-awareness journey and learns to build love and compassion for themselves, which will then ripple out into the rest of the world, which is why I continue to do this work. Just want to spread love to everyone. But it starts with me.
It does.
Yep.
Well, wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Maggie. This has been great.
Thank you, Nicki. We're showing up.
We are.
We're doing it.
We're doing the thing.
I'm proud of us.
Yay.
That's going to wrap up episode 2 of Navigating the Healing Path podcast. Thank you to all of the listeners out there for joining us on this new endeavor of self-expression. And a very special thank you to all of those who feel compelled to share this podcast and our messages of love with the rest of the world. Join us again next week, where we will be discussing healthy boundaries and their importance in creating the necessary space, both within and around ourselves, as a means to continue building the foundation of this internal healing work. Have a wonderful week.